The world has again been gripped by conflicting reports and swirling speculation after claims emerged that one of Iran's most secret and heavily fortified military sites had been hit by an explosion. Some sources suggested damage near a key complex long linked to Iran's nuclear and military infrastructure, but crucially, no independent verification has confirmed the reports. Despite the confusion, the incident captured global attention precisely because of how much is unknown and how much is at stake. At the heart of this story is the complex web of geopolitical tensions involving Iran, Israel, the United States, and other global powers. When an event occurs near the core of a nation's strategic infrastructure, the lack of clear information itself becomes part of the story, prompting questions about intent, misinformation, and the broader security landscape. Iran's military and industrial capabilities, particularly those associated with its nuclear and missile programs, are among the most closely watched in the world. Sites like Parchin, Natanz, Fordo, and others have long been subjects of intense scrutiny by intelligence agencies and nuclear watchdogs, not only because of their strategic importance, but because of the mystery that surrounds much of what happens within their perimeters. These are locations where military research and development intersect with political signaling, surveillance, and, at times, foreign covert actions. Recently, unverified reports began circulating about a blast near one such facility, suggesting that an explosion had occurred and possibly caused significant damage. Videos and social media posts shared by locals claimed that a loud explosion was heard near a site associated with Iran's defensive research infrastructure. However, Iranian state authorities quickly refuted these accounts, declaring that no explosion had taken place at any nuclear or military site. Officials stated that the sounds were linked to routine military testing exercises, not an actual detonation or accident involving weapons or sensitive materials. News of Bahrain, the contradiction between viral social media claims and official denials, highlights one of the defining challenges of modern global security reporting. Moments like this, where information is fragmented, contradictory, or unverified, can fuel speculation, misinterpretation, and even diplomatic tension. When a narrative of a major explosion spreads rapidly online, it can take on a life of its own, prompting responses from governments, analysts, and global audiences before the facts are confirmed or disproven. Behind these immediate reactions lie decades of history involving Iran's nuclear program, its military capabilities, and its relations with powerful regional and global actors. Iran has steadfastly maintained that its nuclear program is for peaceful energy and research purposes. Yet, Western intelligence agencies and nuclear watchdog groups have long expressed concerns that Tehran's ambitions may extend beyond civilian use. These suspicions date back to the early 2000s and are rooted in evidence of activities that could be associated with nuclear weapons research, including experiments involving explosive components. Sites like Parchin were identified by the Institute for Science and International Security as having infrastructure such as high explosive test chambers, facilities which are necessary to test components used in nuclear weapon triggers, though they also have conventional military applications. Critical threats the past decade saw numerous reports alleging covert strikes against such facilities. In October 2024, for example, an Israeli air operation known as Operation Days of Repentance reportedly struck multiple locations in Iran, including military and nuclear-related sites, in response to escalating hostilities and perceived threats from Tehran. Satellite imagery from that period suggested damage at key locations, though Iran downplayed the extent of that damage and disputed many of the external claims. Wikipedia again in June 2025, U.S. forces reportedly joined in operations against several Iranian nuclear sites. Reports suggested that B-2 stealth bombers deployed heavy ordnance at deeply buried facilities like Fordo, while Tomahawk missiles targeted other sites linked to the enrichment and handling of nuclear materials. Although Washington characterized the operation as a strategic blow to Tehran's nuclear ambitions, the full extent of the physical damage and its implications remained disputed. I4X. In alongside these external threats, Iran's internal politics and stability have also shaped the narrative around its most guarded facilities. Beginning in late 2025 and extending into 2026, Iran faced widespread protests triggered by economic grievances, but quickly evolving into broader expressions of dissent against the government. The Iranian state's response has been marked by a harsh crackdown, internet shutdowns, and mass arrests, with rights groups documenting thousands of deaths and tens of thousands of detainees. This domestic unrest adds another layer of complexity to the unrest. With the government under internal pressure, any reported incident at a strategic facility is immediately viewed through multiple lenses as potentially related to internal instability, foreign interference, or misreported accidents. Reuters in this environment, foreign military deployments and diplomatic brinkmanship further raise the stakes. The United States has deployed a carrier strike group to the region, signaling both deterrence and readiness in response to perceived Iranian threats. U.S. President Donald Trump warned Tehran that failing to agree to a nuclear deal would prompt a response far worse than previous actions, underscoring the deterioration of relations and the willingness of Washington to use force if it believes diplomacy has failed. Reuters' Iran's response has been firm and at times defiant. Senior officials have declared that any attack, regardless of scale or origin, would be treated as an act of all-out war. While Iran often frames its posture as defensive, emphasizing its sovereign right to protect itself, such statements also signal how thin the line has become between deterrence and escalation. Reuters, this brings us back to the central issue. The truth of recent reports remains unclear. Viral videos and local social media claims of an explosion near a major site have not been substantiated with independent verification. Satellite imagery that would confirm any structural damage has not been released publicly in a clear or authoritative manner, and Iranian official statements outright deny that any explosion occurred at all, attributing the reported sounds instead to routine military tests, which they say pose no threat or damage. News of Bahrain. Such discrepancies matter because in a high-tension environment, rumors can have tangible consequences. If foreign governments believe an explosion was the result of an attack, they might interpret it as a precursor to escalation. Conversely, if a government underplays or denies an incident, it may be seen as concealing a vulnerability or a mishap. Both interpretations can shape policy decisions, military postures, and public opinion. The ambiguity also reflects a broader reality of modern conflict zones. Information is often as contested as territory. Governments tightly control what they release, particularly when it involves strategic military or nuclear infrastructure. At the same time, social media and digital communication empower local observers to share real-time footage, regardless of verification. Analysts around the world sift through these fragments, attempting to distinguish between genuine events, propaganda, misattribution, and noise. To understand why such an incident, even as an unverified report, garners worldwide attention, It helps to recognize the symbolism of the sites involved. Strategic facilities in Iran are not just physical locations. They represent broader debates over nuclear proliferation, regional security, and the balance of power in the Middle East. They embody decades of negotiation, suspicion, and periodic confrontation between Tehran and Western powers, particularly the United States. They also illustrate the deep distrust that exists on both sides. Iran views external pressure as an assault on its sovereignty, while its adversaries often view Iranian actions as evidence of hidden ambitions. This cycle of suspicion has fueled numerous diplomatic efforts, some successful, others derailed. The 2015 Iran nuclear deal, formerly the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action JCPOA, represented a major diplomatic breakthrough. It placed limits on Iran's enrichment capacity and provided for extensive monitoring by the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA. However, the U.S. withdrawal from the deal in 2018 and subsequent reimposition of sanctions strained the agreement's viability. Even as international actors sought to salvage or renegotiate aspects of the deal, distrust grew and parallel military developments, including covert operations and retaliatory measures, expanded the context of conflict. This long history matters because today's reactions are shaped by years of precedent, confrontation, compromise, and collapse. Another complicating factor is the role of external actors beyond the U.S. and Iran. Israel, for instance, has repeatedly taken actions against Iranian targets that its leaders argue are necessary to curb Tehran's influence and prevent nuclear weapon development. While these actions are often not publicly confirmed or acknowledged by Israeli authorities, satellite imagery and analyst reports have suggested damage to missile factories, military infrastructure, and facilities linked to potential nuclear research. Iran typically downplays or denies the strategic significance of such strikes, but the mutual hostility persists. TRT World at the same time. Institutions like the IAEA attempt to maintain oversight and verification of nuclear activities. In recent sessions, Iran has pushed back against what it sees as biased treatment, arguing that inspections focus only on undamaged sites and demanding clarification on how past attacks should influence access to bombed locations. The tension between Iran and the IAEA highlights how even international organizations struggle to extract clarity from opaque situations. Reuters, all of these layers, political, military, information, and institutional, create a fog of uncertainty. When reports emerge of an explosion at a most guarded base, those words resonate not because of a single event, but because of the decades of mistrust, conflict, and strategic signaling that have preceded it. In the absence of independent confirmation, what we can say with confidence is this: authorities in Iran deny that any explosion occurred at nuclear or military sites in the reported area. They describe the sounds associated with the reports as linked to routine military activities. At the same time, social media and online posts have claimed that an explosive incident did happen, though these claims lack authoritative verification. This contradiction itself has become part of the global narrative, a reminder that in contemporary geopolitics, uncertainty often matters more than certainty. Analysts will continue to monitor satellite data, governmental statements, and open-source intelligence for signs of damage or activity that could clarify what actually happened. Observers will also pay attention to how this ambiguity influences diplomatic behavior, military preparedness, and international responses. Meanwhile, regional tensions remain high. Iran continues to face pressure over its nuclear program and domestic political stability. International reactions to its conduct, including recent designations of its elite Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organization by the European Union, add to the diplomatic friction. The Guardian whether the recent claims about a blast at a strategic site turn out to be true, false, exaggerated, or something else entirely. They reflect the fragile state of international trust and the power of perception in shaping strategic choices. In a world where information travels fast and verification lags, the truth can sometimes be the most elusive element of all, and the absence of clarity can be as consequential as clarity itself.